Well, good morning. I'm Rachel, and this morning I'll be talking to Sharon, and we're going to be talking together about the simplicity of speech and the simplicity of apparel. So, we've been going through the book, The Elimination of Hurry, and actually, John Mark Comer doesn't really cover the simplicity of speech much in the simplicity chapter in his book. So we'd like to really encourage you to visit the website and to delve into the talk he has there on the simplicity of speech and the other resources, because we both think that this is such a key topic in our apprenticeship to Jesus. And John Mark Comer has a really great one-line summary of what the simplicity of speech is. He says, the simplicity of speech is a disciplined attempt to bring our speech into alignment with Jesus's heart. So, Sharon, why don't you tell me a little bit about how this topic has impacted you?
So I've always tried to live by the ethos of treat others as you would like to be treated, but I think this goes deeper than that. So there's a couple of Bible verses that I'd like to look at that show Jesus knew when to say something and when it's best to remain quiet. So firstly, I'm going to look at Mark 12, where it says, later they sent some of the Pharisees and Herodians to Jesus to catch him in his words. They came to him and said, "Teacher, we know that you are a man of integrity. You aren't swayed by others because you pay no attention to who they are, but you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. Is it right to pay the imperial tax to Caesar or not? Should we pay or shouldn't we?" But Jesus knew their hypocrisy. "Why are you trying to trap me?" he asked. "Bring me a denarius and let me look at it." They brought the coin, and he asked them, "Whose image is this, and whose inscription?" "Caesar's," they replied. Then Jesus said to them, "Give back to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God." And they were amazed at him. And then if we look at Mark 15, very early in the morning, the chief priests with the elders, the teachers of the law, and the whole Sanhedrin made their plans. So they bound Jesus, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate. "Are you the king of the Jews?" asked Pilate. "You have said so," Jesus replied. The chief priests accused him of many things. So again, Pilate asked him, "Aren't you going to answer? See how many things they are accusing you of." But Jesus still made no reply, and Pilate was amazed. So note how both readings end with the word amazed. In the first reading, we can learn how to talk like Jesus. Jesus had just the right word for the right time. He knew how to meet people at their level. And in the second reading, we learn how not to talk like Jesus when it's best just to keep quiet.
And so it's just a topic that's not only about our mouth, it's really about what's in our heart, isn't it? And we see Jesus's heart so much through the way he speaks. It's just so rich. But John Mark Comer goes on to give us 6 practical areas to concentrate on regarding the simplicity of speech, which help us to put this into practice. So they include talking less, complete honesty in speech, asking for what we want and not being manipulative in the way we ask, just being straightforward, building people up, blessing, not cursing, and prophecy. So I just wondered what stood out for you amongst those things.
So again, I'd like to have a quick look at 2 of these. Tell the truth and not lie. Why do we lie? Most lies come out of fear. People lie to get out of trouble, or we fear what people think of us, or want what we want people to think. We want people to think we are better than we are. I have tried to teach my children to always tell the truth. If you live an honest life and tell the truth, you will not be caught out by lies. You never forget the truth. Whereas if you lie, you have to be really good at remembering who you told what to, and end up telling more lies to cover up the initial lie. And secondly, I was thinking about the ask for what we want and not manipulate, dominate, and condemn.
Yeah.
So at the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus covers much of this. He says, don't swear on oath. All you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything from beyond this comes from the evil one. Ask, seek, and find. By prayer, we ask God for what we want. But John Mark Comer tells us not to avoid the difficult conversations, but to simply ask people for what we want. Please, can you do this or not do this? We don't need to manipulate people. Do not judge, or you too will be judged. That doesn't mean that we can't make judgments about good or evil, but don't shame people into the behaviour that you think is best. Don't attempt to make people receive what they're not yet ready for.
Yeah, definitely. John Mark Comer suggests that we try as a practice to help us to put these things into practice is to be mindful to catch ourselves 1 to 3 times a day before we speak, and to choose to be silent instead. Or if we're a naturally hesitant person, we choose to speak up where before we would have been silent. So I just wondered if you managed to try this and how you got on with it.
Okay, so initially I was thinking, have you ever been in a meeting where the same few people dominate the conversation, and then the one person who hasn't said a word throughout that meeting suddenly comes out with a complete nugget? Personally, I've been on both sides of that in the past. So now normally I'm a talker and the one who isn't afraid of saying what I think. But I can remember one particular meeting where I was sitting there, I couldn't think of anything to say that would add to the debate that was going on. I really didn't think my opinion mattered in that situation, so I was quietly listening to what was going on around me. And then suddenly someone put me on the spot, asked me my thoughts. So I shared something that at the time I felt was really totally insignificant. But everyone in the room looked at me as if I'd spoken an alien language. The conversation started again, but it appeared as if I'd provided the answer to the problem without even realising it. And then I was thinking of a situation where last week I was in a client visit when I witnessed the power of staying silent. So I don't know if you're aware, but I recently trained to be a deck coach for CAP, and due to COVID, all my previous client visits have been conducted one-to-one over video calls. But last week I was able to meet a client face-to-face, so I took a befriender with me, which was great because this enabled me to actually spend time on my laptop updating the information that I needed to, because that allowed the befriender to engage the client in conversation. And it was just so nice to be able to witness that conversation, because the befriender started asking things that I wouldn't normally have the time to be able to ask myself when I've done that one-to-one. So it was just really nice knowing that I could just take that step back and be quiet and let them tease out that conversation.
I started to practice this on a day when I was due to we homeschool our children, so we were due to meet up with a couple of other families. I knew a little bit of the situation of one of the mums, but not much. And I was just so grateful that I'd read this and started thinking about the fact that it was okay to be silent and not always have the answers, because the mum shared some very difficult circumstances in her life with me, and I had no idea how to respond. And I just thought, you know what, it's okay to be silent in this situation. So I was silent and I was praying whilst she was talking, and I think it just allowed Jesus to come into that situation more than it would have if I had been really searching for the answers myself and trying to fill that silence. Made space for the Holy Spirit to come and lead me to the right things to say and enable her to open up more. It's something that I need to wake up and think, right, well, I'm going to try and catch myself 1 to 3 times today.
I think it's really interesting where you said about like actually stopping and praying because you don't know what to say, and actually taking that opportunity to ask God to help you in that situation as well. I think that's quite a key key thing there.
Okay, so shall we move on to the simplicity of apparel?
Okay, so within simplicity of apparel, John Mark Comer gives us some interesting statistics. In the western part of the world, the average person buys 70 new items of clothing and 7 pairs of shoes per year. Most items of clothing are only worn 7 times before they're discarded. Globally, 1 in 6 people work in the garment industry, and 80% of these are women. 98% do not receive a living wage. So do you have any thoughts that you'd like to share on these figures?
Yeah, I think they're pretty shocking, aren't they? So I definitely think it's something that's important for us to think about, because we are called to love and care and be, think that justice is important. So if we love Jesus and we love his people, then we should be thinking about where we put our money and how we spend our money on apparel, because we don't want to be caught in injustice. And there's a verse in the Bible somewhere that says it's about, I think it's about selling a man for a pair of sandals, and it's that idea of injustice in the clothing industry, and that really shocked me. And you just think, yeah, okay, what is the human cost of the clothes that I'm wearing?
Yeah, I think the thing that stood out for me there was the fact that the majority of items are only worn 7 times before they're discarded. And I think that's a shocking statistic, and just shows what a throwaway, disposable society that we're living in now. In Genesis 3, we read that Adam and Eve ate the fruit from the tree in the Garden of Eden. Their eyes were opened and they realised they were naked. John Mark Comer speaks about clothing being a response to sin, to cover our shame and fear. Would you like to share your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I loved this because he doesn't actually dwell much on the injustice side of the clothing industry, because on the Bridgetown website, they've got loads of talks about that, which you can delve into. But he goes straight to the reason that we only wear things 7 times and buy 70 new items of clothing a year. God says to them, why are you hiding? And they say, we were afraid because we were naked, so we hid. And so it's the first mention of fear in scripture. And the word naked says that they, it shows that they were aware of their sin and their shame. And then he goes on to say that it's also then the first mention of animal sacrifice in scripture, the first atonement for sin, because God, he clothes them, it's a response to their sin, but it's an atonement because he makes clothes to provide for them. And the word for garment, where God makes garment, is the same word that's used in Hebrew for Joseph's coat and for the priest's garments. And so it's just so beautiful that God clothes our sin and our shame, but that our relationship to clothing is so emotionally complex because we want to use it to cover our sin and our shame. The only thing that can really help us out of this problem is the love of God. It just made me think that we do wear clothes to make ourselves feel good. Like we want to look beautiful. We want to, maybe sometimes even we want to look better than someone else. And it still becomes a place of shame for us.
Well, just on that, I mean, if we're honest, how many of us either buy clothes or hold on to ones that are a size too small in the hope that we will lose weight, or of a style that we hope will make us look younger? So In this week's challenge, we want to try and move from that idealist denial into realistic acceptance. So John Mokoma's suggestion is that we take everything out of your wardrobe. You sort everything into 5 piles, 1 to give away, 1 to sell, 1 to throw away, 1 to wait, and 1 to keep. So if you're not sure about anything, put it in the wait pile. And the idea is that you move that pile into the loft, under the bed, and set yourself a time limit, 6 months maximum. And if you haven't missed it in that time, it will be easier to let it go. Set a self-imposed limit on the number of items in your wardrobe. And there's no pressure here, it's entirely up to you. But some of the suggestions on the website are Project 333, which is a minimalism fashion challenge to dress with 33 items or less for 3 months, or to look at having a 10-item wardrobe. So by that, you don't include your underwear or active wear, but just to have 10 pieces that you can mix and match to wear as your wardrobe, or to have the uniform, which if you kind of think about some people like Steve Jobs, who were always in the same black jumper, same trousers and shoes. Obviously, you are allowed multiple copies for hygiene reasons, so you can have one in the wash and one on. But yeah, have you got on with this?
Yeah, I feel like I've had a helping hand in this in a way, because when I had my operation for breast cancer, I then couldn't wear a lot of my clothes because my arm was too sore, and I had to, it forced me to put away, I just literally put away everything that I couldn't fit into anymore, and I had to go and get some things that I could wear. And yeah, I mean, I guess I did keep them because I thought, well, you know, maybe my arm won't hurt so much. But we're now, you know, over a year since my operation and I still can't wear them. So this challenge did make me think, right, okay, well, I'm not going to hold on to them anymore. So I have donated all of those that I couldn't wear anymore. I have, in the past, I have looked at seasonal clothes. So I have a box in the loft where I put my thick jumpers in the summer, and then I swap them out for my summer dresses. I put my summer dresses away in the winter. So that kind of helps to keep things fresh. And then you think, oh, haven't worn this for a while. And it helps you to curb that kind of desire to get something new, because you kind of have got something new, you got it out from the loft. But I think just listening to this has just encouraged me to be a bit more ruthless, really, and to be realistic about what I do wear, because you wear kind of 20% of your wardrobe 80% of the time. So that other 80% that you're not wearing, do you really need to keep it? So this week I have also then probably put that 80% into my 6 months box, and I will see.
I've had several times over the years where I kind of do the whole get everything out the wardrobe and sort it, but the keep pile stays in the wardrobe. And every time I say, if I haven't worn this by the time I next clear it out, I'll get rid of it. I think maybe now's the time that I need to admit that it needs to go.
So I think what stood out for me most, it's about what we can do to be free. So, you know, you might be hearing this and thinking, oh, you know, having to dress a certain way or to get rid of stuff, well, it's restrictive, like it's gonna limit me. But by engaging in some of these practices, and it's about being released from our innate response of fear and shame that we saw in Genesis 3. One of the verses that they looked at was 1 Timothy 2 verse 8 to 10, the verse then says that we should put our time and effort into our internal life. And I just think that's what this whole journey of the elimination of hurry and being a disciple of Jesus has been about. It's been about looking at our internal life. And so this simplicity of apparel is just another part of that. And being an apprentice of Jesus is about stepping into freedom. My hope and my prayer is for all of us is that it will bring us into a closer relationship with Jesus.